Good morning.
Good morning.
Councillors, CEO, directors. Let us acknowledge the traditional custodians of this wonderful place we call home. We recognise that we walk in footsteps that are thousands of generations old, and in that recognition, we pay our respects to the elders of our traditional custodians, past, present, and those emerging. Welcome to our online audience. We are online again this morning. Oh, good. Welcome to our online audience. As you know, this meeting is being streamed live and recorded in accordance with the Council's standing orders. I declare the meeting open. The first order of business will be to accept a motion that the attendance today of Councillor Englert will be by audio-visual link due to his ill health. Would somebody like to move? Councillor Englert moves, seconded by Councillor Hassan. Those in favour? Any against? It's carried. Thank you. Welcome, Councillor Englert. Thank you very much for joining us by live link. Our opening prayer today was to be delivered by Dr. Julia Pittman. She's not here, so let us together seek a blessing on this meeting of Council. Lord, help us to be strong, for our community depends on us. Help us to conduct ourselves in the spirit of truth and compassion. Guide our actions to deliver fair and reasonable outcomes. And Reverend Dr. Julia Pittman is here, so I don't need to continue that that seeking of a blessing. And welcome the Reverend Dr. Julia Pittman to open our meeting in prayer.
Apologies, I got stuck in a lift. No good. Very good. Let us join together in prayer. Let us pray. Lord of our life and God of our salvation, guide this meeting of Mackay Regional Council and all those who direct its business. Grant your blessings on our strengths and show your mercy and forgiveness where we fall short of your hopes for us. Today we pray for all councillors, staff, residents and visitors, that they might know your comfort and strength and find in you their identity as your people, as your children. Free us all from the sins of overwork, constant electioneering, filibustering, and help us to find relief, our true humanity, in a right balance between work, rest and worship. Today, on the 45th anniversary of the Uniting Church in Australia, we thank you for the gift of Christian unity, and we ask for your strength to sustain and to further equip the worldwide movement for Christian unity to respond to Christ's prayer that we may all be one. We give thanks for stamina, for energy and drive in the service of the public. We pray for those who today are facing diagnosis, treatment and recovery. Particularly we pray for Michael Thompson, for his family and for his successor. We pray as we approach the outcome of a state government election for a fair and equitable distribution of resources across the entire state of Queensland. We ask for your sustenance in our work, support in our fears, strengthen us in our resolve to seek and pursue the peace, harmony and welfare of all, for the people of all our area. Give us joy and satisfaction in the service of the public. Give us appropriate pride in success, and give us approval of a good conscience in everything that we do. May your Holy Spirit so work amongst us that in our Mackay Regional Council area, we may be renewed in truth, beauty and order, and in happiness and in peace. Through Jesus Christ our Lord we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you. So there's nobody else on council business, no apologies. Condolences? Any condolences to offer? No condolences? Any conflicts of interest to declare today? No, thank you. The minutes of the meeting of the 8th of June have been circularised and they're also included in the agenda now. Would somebody like to move that they be Signed as a true and correct record. Councillor Bonaventura moves, Councillor Green seconds. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. There's no business arising out of the previous minutes that we've just moved to be signed, included on page 52 of this agenda. There's only one page of it. There's no mayoral minutes today. Consideration of committee reports and recommendations. Let's move on to that then. The first report of the Honourable Mayor and CEO is the councillor attendance at the Civic Leaders Summit, and that Councillor May and Councillor Mann be granted approval to attend the Local Government Association of Queensland Civic Leaders Summit at Twin Waters on the 29th to the 30th of June. Any questions? Somebody like to move the adoption then? Councillor Bonaventura moves, seconded by Councillor Green. Councillor Bonaventura.
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, there are many reasons why it's important for this council to be represented at this conference, but I will only mention two. First up, on day one, there are three topics, and I'll read them out. They are advancing local communities' livability, building the foundations for livability, and build a plan localising livability. As you know, Your Worship, livability is one of the key pillars in our corporate plan, so this topic will be highly relevant to our council. The second one is equally important, with the title, Avoiding the Wall, Strategy versus Operations. And this one's delivered by Mayor Tanya Milligan from the Lockyer Valley. The first sentence says it all, and I quote, "It is often said that elected members are responsible for strategy and CEOs are responsible for operations. But is it that simple?" End quote. This is a vexed question, one that this council still has not solved. And I look forward to Councillor Mann and Councillor May detailing how answers to these topics can improve our council moving forward. Very happy to support, Your Worship.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Bonaventura. Speaker against? Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? It's carried. Yes, we've got you, Councillor England. Move on, 11.1.2, the Strategic Financial Report for the month of May. CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. As at the end of May, we're forecasting an operating surplus of 3.9 million. The majority of our revenue categories are tracking ahead of budget, and in particular grants and subsidies, with the prepayment of next year's financial assistance grant received ahead of schedule. Revenue from fees and charges also continues to exceed our forecasts. Expenses are tracking reasonably well also, with some overruns during the month on materials and services that are not expected to impact the end of year result. Capital expenditure is below forecast, with market conditions and resource shortages continuing to impact on capital delivery. While we know that June will be a month of significant capital spend, we are still anticipating a high level of carryovers to next financial year. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, CEO. Questions for the CEO? Councillor Bonaventura.
Your Worship, just in relation to the last point the CEO made, like at the bottom of page 68, I note the Director advises... No, sorry, Your Worship, I'll take that back. I'm in the wrong one. No, Strategic Financial Report.
Yes, the Strategic Financial Report. Yeah.
Sorry, Your Worship.
The question about the carryover.
Yes, at the bottom of page 68, I note the Director advises ongoing risk of not achieving the product delivery, which is currently 75%. Can the CEO please advise me of her thoughts on the estimated percentage of spend we will achieve? And then obviously the carryover, that will go into carryovers transferred to next year. And finally, does the CEO see a better outlook for the 22-23? If so, what are the drivers for a better result?
CEO.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. We are currently forecasting, with the best knowledge that we can, that we'll spend around 85% of the capital budget this year. There is still some risk attached to that, with projects completing within that time. So our best estimates would suggest we'll land somewhere between that 81 to 85% all told for the year. That does, as you noted, Councillor, put a significant amount of carryovers on the table for next year, and we will work to ensure that the impact to next year's budget will be managed accordingly. So we do intend at the first budget review to bring forward a review of the capital budget for next year, with some proposals on what we will push out to make room for the carryovers so that we're able to maintain a capital budget of around that $106 to $110 million mark. That's the goal that we'll aim for at the first budget review period. Relating to the final part of your question, the outlook for next year. So honestly, we're not seeing a substantially improved outlook for the next period. We do see that ongoing resource shortages will continue to be a factor, but there are some mitigating factors as well that may ultimately help with some of those outcomes. The first being the increase that we're seeing in interest rates. So that may have an impact of slowing demand in the residential and commercial sectors over time. The opening back up of overseas migration might also see some return to maybe some skilled workforce coming into Mackay that might help offset some of the shortages. But again, that's a longer term play. And internally that we are working on some strategies that might see how we deliver our capital slightly differently to allow a greater level of delivery. And that's in packaging of works and other initiatives like that. So we'll be doing everything we can internally to try and influence that result. But there are some external factors that we think will also come into play.
Thank you.
Further questions? No further questions? Would somebody like to move the report's adoption, the Strategic Financial Report? Councillor May, seconded by Councillor Mann. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you to the CEO for a very enlightening answers to the questions that have been raised. I'd just like to highlight that this particular month, at the end of May, we do have an unfavourable variance of 0.03 million. And as we've just said, that the capital program is sitting at around $83.9 million of delivered at this point in time. And there's we've just heard that there's steps in play to at least get that to around 85% of being delivered. And we've seen, and we've noted this in our strategic financial report for month after month after month, that the pressures on the council due to the impact of COVID are ongoing. Even though COVID may have settled a bit within our community and we're getting back to full swing of things, it continues to play a big part in absenteeism and just general impact on council operations. The data cleansing of our assets is continuing as well. We have such a big asset base and that work is ongoing. And of course, as we've said, the expenditure in our capital program, the variances that we're seeing in our predicted, what we thought was a budget predicted for the delivery of the capital program, we are seeing increased tenders, increased cost in those tenders, which again impacts on council's ability to deliver that program. We've also, this particular month, at the end of May, there was a favourable variance of $1.6 million in our revenue, which was offset by an unfavourable variance of $1.6 million in our expenditure. So we're at status quo, you might as well say there. I'd like to just highlight the rates recovery receivables, and we see here that, you know, at the rates went out in March. We're now into that period of processing the payments that have not been paid. And if we look at our years 1, 2 and 3, we see that we're approximately $2.4 million in that 1 to 3 year bracket. So for a council this size with a rate base as we have, to be only overdue by $2.4 million, I think is credit to the process that we have in place to collect those rates and the work that the officers do in that space. And the other thing that I'd like to highlight is our asset sustainability ratio. You will see in your report that they're all red, but we know that from the operations of councils, the capital, that we have been on a journey of renewing and building new capital that has impacted that sustainability ratio. And we've also been the beneficiary of NDRRA money that's come in and been able to have new capital spent there. So we'll see this afternoon in our budget that in the years forecast into the future, that asset sustainability ratio will come back into the green as we spend more money on our renewables.
Thank you very much. Councillor May, speaker against. Any other speakers? Councillor Bella, speaking for.
I too would like to thank our CEO for the comprehensive answer. I took the opportunity to listen to comments made by the head of the Reserve Bank in the last couple of days regarding inflation. And what is alarming to me is that our inflation is being driven internally rather than externally, nationally. The inflation is being driven by essential items, not by discretionary. So there is some question whether the increasing of interest rates is going to slow that inflationary process down. They are predicting that inflation will peak at about 7.5% in December. What is alarming to me is at no point did they say whether that peak was then going to be followed by a sliding back, or whether there was going to be continuation of inflation for a greater length of time at a very high level. Thus, I think that while we can be hopefully optimistic, I think we should prepare for difficult economic times over the next 12 months to 2 years. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Are there any other speakers? No other speakers. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Thank you. Then point 1.3, the adoption of council policies. There's two policies, number 20, which is the advertising spending policy, and number 31, which is the grants policy. Both of these are legislative requirements for the council to have policies like this in place. It's a fairly detailed and comprehensive report. Are there any questions? No questions? Would somebody like to move then the report's adoption for these two policies? Councillor Bonaventura, seconded by Councillor Mann. Councillor Bonaventura.
Thank you, Worship. Look, the two policies there, the advertising policy and the grants policy. The advertising policy sets out guidelines for staff in using ratepayer money in promotion and information sharing of council's activities. It's a detailed document, and it even includes what can and cannot be done in the last 3 months before a council election. In relation to the grants policy, there are quite a few of them. They are there to give direction, not only to those applying for grants, but to staff and councillors on our responsibilities to ensure that the correct procedure is followed in the distribution of funds. As you know, our community grants program this year has given out $550,000 in ratepayer money to not-for-profit community groups in our region to maintain and enhance what they do in the community. This year we have the inclusion of the Activate My Place micro grants, and this program will support projects and activities that connect the local community and create places people want to go. The micro grant program is designed to help people become more active and involved in Mackay City Centre and waterfront areas. These policies have all been updated to reflect governance and other minor changes where necessary, with the exception of the COVID Hardship Assistance Grant, which has been deleted as it's done its job. Happy to support them, Your Worship.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Bonaventura. Speaker against? Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. Thank you. The Development Services monthly review for the month of May. Director.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'm pleased to present the Development Services monthly review report for May. Some highlights for the month are as follows. The weed harvester was back in the Botanic Gardens lagoons in April and May to keep on top of the aquatic weed. This is being supplemented by continuing spraying of weeds with the Argo. The report on the desilting trial has now been received and is being reviewed by staff. The council will be briefed on this report in the future. Staying at gardens, the Friends of the Gardens were busy in May with a number of activities, including Daisy Day, which saw 25 volunteers plant 1,230 daisies on the bank of the lagoon, just below the observation deck. They also presented council with a $10,000 cheque contributing to the purchase of collection management software for the Botanic Gardens, which will help us record all plants in the living collection and enable this information to be shared with the public and other Botanic Gardens. The request for quotations for the RV strategy was issued in May, with the closing date for submissions being the 14th of June. The Strategic Planning and Economic Development and Tourism teams assisted QCN Fibre in their successful application to the Regional Connectivity Program. The funding will enable the delivery of a fixed wireless solution to businesses and residents in Chatton, Pinnacle, Gargett, Youngalla, Marion and Moraine. QCN Fibre met with the Mayor, CEO and relevant council staff on the 23rd of May to discuss the project, with officers providing ongoing assistance. The Economic Development team were busy also in May providing support for some significant events. In particular, the team assisted with the successful delivery of the Oceania Athletics Championships and the beach horse races in June, and providing assistance to stakeholders for the upcoming Queensland Mining and Engineering exhibition in July. And work on the refurbishment of the kitchen and cafe at the Serena Sugar Shed was completed in May. The new facilities will will improve the use and operation of these areas for the benefit of staff, volunteers and visitors to the Sugar Shed. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Director. Questions for the Director? Councillor Mann.
So I've got two. electronic page 132 in regard to signage and wayfinding for the Mackay waterfront. It refers to a strategy, but I just want to confirm there was no strategy endorsed by council for signage and wayfinding.
Director?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Sorry, that was a wrong use of language. We'll fix that up for the next report.
Okay.
And just one more, electronic page 134, playground equipment inspection and maintenance table. And the report says a number of visual inspections, it's noted that the number of visual inspections has been low over the last couple of months. So I just wondered why and what's the difference between a visual and an operational inspection?
Okay, Director, can you answer that?
Thank you, Worship. So an operational inspection are the full inspections in accordance with the Australian standards undertaken by the fully qualified playground staff or building maintenance officers who are trained in that area. The visual inspections are the sort of quick, have a look, does everything look okay, is there any obvious damage? Those have fallen. We have lost quite a few people in that team in recent times. They've either moved into different roles as part of the restructure. We had a couple leave the organisation. We had a person on secondment. So we've generally just had less people in that team. So all our efforts have gone into the operational inspections, which are the critical ones that we need to do to ensure compliance, and the visual inspections have dropped off. We have built numbers back up in that team through recruitment, and I think the training was happening this week to start to bring that up to speed. We also had some people on leave. I think, like everyone, we've been affected with things like that. So there were a number of visual inspections that were undertaken, but they weren't actually recorded because there were the staff there who could assist the newer staff in entering those into a setting. So the training that's happening and all the new staff coming on board, we expect those numbers to return to normal, or maybe even spike a bit in June when we have some backlog entered, and then return to normal following that time.
With that, okay. Further questions? Councillor Bella?
With regard to our spraying of weeds in waterways with the Argo there, are we undertaking any oxygen level maintenance to see whether those weeds, as they decay, are depleting that oxygen in water and going to lead to some sort of kill?
Director?
Yes, no, we're not doing. We're really the focus is just on the weed control. So, and that's obviously the range of different things. So the weed harvester. We're not using the long arm excavator at the moment, but we have, and then the manual spraying as well, where we can reach it on the edges. But we're not doing any testing of the impact that that's having on the oxygen levels.
Further questions? Councillor Bonaventura?
Oh, just the graph on page 137 in relation to the request for maintenance. Now the table, the table's only slightly better than last month's disappointing result, so it's an improvement. But can the Director confirm if the tables in this month's table are just for the month alone, or do they include work requests from a certain date?
Okay, Director?
Yes, thank you. No, it captures everything that we have in the system that's been assigned to parks. So there's no sort of end date or start date. It's really just everything that was in the system during the month of May that was being dealt with by the team.
Yes. So, sorry, Worship, if I could ask a follow-up question just to confirm.
Sure.
So it doesn't mean that we had, like 147 new requests for maintenance for weeds and mowing. So it's just that's the table that's
table in the system.
Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank
you. That it included ones that were carryover from the month before that were still in the system.
Thank you. That does clear that up quite a bit.
Very good. Further questions? Somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Jones moves, seconded by Councillor Green. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Worship. Look, I think the report is very good. I thank the Director and the staff for putting that together, and I'm particularly pleased about the consultants that are going to be coming online shortly for the RV strategy. The only other positive thing that I wanted to talk about was the fact that the development assessments and engineering teams are on target, and it's really great to see that they've had that chance to play catch up, because as we know previously we've had a lower number of staff. We've been able to get a few extra staff on board, and so that in line with the negotiations that they've had with applicants has mean that things can be finalised, and so obviously everything's looking great in that area, so thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Jones, speaker against. Any other speakers? Councillor Green, speaking for.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I too was going to comment on the development assessment and development engineering teams. It really is a great result despite the numbers of assessments just tracking well above pre-COVID levels still. So congratulations and thanks to congratulations and thanks to the teams as well for an outstanding result. I just wanted to point out that this weekend, if you're wondering why Mackay seems to be inundated by teenagers and you can't get a room anywhere, is because the Queensland Independent Secondary School Netball and Rugby League confraternity competition is on. So from the 26th of June to the 1st of July, it'll be at the South Mackay Sporting Precinct. I believe this is the first time the Rugby League and the netball will be held at once. So this results in something like 1,700 boys and girls from independent schools competing in this competition right here in Mackay this weekend. There's 64 netball teams, 60 rugby league teams, 150 plus games, 400 plus officials, 6,000 plus spectators, and over $6 million injection directly into the Mackay economy, and that's why the Invest Mackay Events and Conference Attraction Program was very pleased to help support this competition. So it's a fantastic boon to our region this weekend.
Thanks, Councillor Green. Councillor Townsend, speaking for.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to bring to attention the fantastic pilot program that's been developed, which will activate vacant windows within the city heart. Not only will this create a colourful aesthetic appearance to empty shop fronts, it will also promote products by our local makers that can be purchased by passers-by using interactive QR codes. That puts a whole new perspective on window shopping, I thought. 4 vacant windows within Wood and Victoria Streets have already been chosen, along with 4 small businesses to fill the displays. These will be installed throughout the month of June, and I so look forward to seeing that. Another great initiative grant to ensure and improve the late night community safety and connectivity around licensed venues and surrounding areas has seen 6 projects being awarded under the Safe Night Precinct Safety Initiative grant. Just over $16,000 has been distributed to 6 private properties, which will be invested to upgrade lighting and CCTV. And on a much happier note as well, for lovers of nature, it might be pertinent for me to recommend the Orchids in Paradise event, which is being held at the Mackay from the 1st to the 3rd of July, and the National Tree Day community tree planting being held at the Blue Water Trail and Woodlands on the 29th and the 31st of July.
Thank you very much, Councillor Townsend. Are there any other speakers? No other speakers. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Let's move on. 11.2.2 is development application number 60, reconfiguration of a lot, 2 rural lots into 2 lots at Mackay Youngler Road at Netherdale. Now, we've had briefings on this. This is a fairly extensive paper to council. Fairly well straightforward. Are there questions? No questions?
No, Your Worship. Just I'd like to, if there are no questions, move an alternate motion that has been prepared and already circulated to council.
We've certainly got the alternate motion. Was there anybody going to support or wish to move the recommendation from the officers? None? Councillor Bonaventura, you want to move your alternate motion?
Happy to move the alternate motion.
Thank you very much. Seconder, Councillor Jones. Councillor Bonaventura.
Your Worship, this proposal relates to a reconfiguration of lot between Finchhatton and Netherdale. The Finchhatton area in the Pioneer Valley has been growing cane for many years, having its own sugar mill operating from 1906 till 1990, when they amalgamated with Mackay Sugar. And I know Councillor Mann and Councillor Seymour, who grew up in the valley, will agree with me when I say that that region grows excellent cane and often averages 100 tonne a hectare or better, and a lot of that without irrigation. Councillors, you understand that you understand well that our region relies heavily on the sugar industry as one of our key economic pillars. You also know how often we are asked to chop a bit off here or there for uses, and many of our smaller farms are just disappearing, going to other uses. This application is different. This application seeks to increase the current farming lot by 15 hectares to improve the economies of scale while not creating any extra lots. I thank staff for the detail in the report and their interpretation of the planning scheme. I do not intend to go through all the points in this motion, But the Rural Zone Code, the Ag Layover Code and the reconfiguration of a lot code all read in support of allowing this to proceed. There is one point that defines the difference between voting for and against this motion. The question must be, we need to ask ourselves, councillors, can we accept that the two lots being tied together in this proposal are approximately 280 metres apart? I know I can, because this benefits and maintains approximately an extra 1,000 tonne of sugarcane production, which will benefit the farmer, Mackay Sugar and the region as a whole. And I believe that far outweighs the negatives. And I commend the motion to councillors.
Thanks very much. Councillor Bonaventura, speaker against. Any other speakers? Councillor Jones speaking for.
Thank you, Worship. We have a planning scheme that's very broad to allow flexibility in the scheme for our region. And while I fully understand the officer's refusal to the matter according to our planning scheme, I am concerned that if this reconfiguration of a lot does not happen, we'll be losing good quality agricultural land. And at times it can be a little bit here and a little bit there. I've had a very strong opinion since starting my role as a councillor in 2004 that we must protect GQAL at all costs to ensure that we have a strong agriculture and sugar industry now and into the future. And for these reasons, I'll be voting for the amendment to the motion, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. Any other speakers? As you know, councillors, we're required, if we go against a motion, a recommendation of officers in terms of a motion before council, we are required to, by the Act, to give the decisions and the advice that backs up those decisions. I think this is a very well prepared alternative motion, and the motion is that council approves the development permit for the reconfiguration of a lot, 2 rural lots into 2 rural lots. The supporting advice is outlined. The conditions will be complied with as this alternative motion refers back to the original conditions. Compliance with council standards, etc. I think this is a very valid and well supported alternative motion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay. DA number 62 now, the reconfiguration of a lot, 1 rural lot into 2 lots at 233 Holts Road. Once again, this has been the subject of a fair amount of feedback to council. Director, is there anything further you want to say on this one?
I don't think so, Your Worship. I think, as you said, most councillors are aware of this proposal. We had a briefing about the proposal last week, so, but I'm happy to take any questions in council.
Are there questions? Councillor Bonaventura has got a question.
Thank you, Your Worship. And the Director's report is quite detailed. But there's a section there that says, with master planning almost 10 years away, or maybe more, can I ask if master planning on this parcel in the future will take the site of the dwelling or a trimmed down version of that into account?
Director?
Yes, thank you, Worship. It's not possible to say at this stage. So when the master planning occurs at that time in the future, it will really be up to the landowner in terms of what their intention is for that area. If they want to incorporate that house, the existing house as part of that, they can do that. If they don't want to, they can choose not to. It's really up to them.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. Any further questions? The officer's recommendation is that the council refuse the application for reconfiguring the lot as outlined in this agenda item. Somebody like to move? Councillor May moves. Councillor Jones seconds. Councillor
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Look, it's never easy making these decisions, and I think it's been outlined in the report that the lot in question here and dividing that into 2 lots now would really inhibit future development in that area. So for that reason, we're most definitely supporting the officer's recommendation.
Do you speak against? Are there any other speakers? Councillor Bonaventura speaking for.
Thank you. Agree with Councillor May. This proposal does not fit the ROL in the rural zone. It does not fit any of the code guidelines, so I'll be voting in line with the officer's recommendation to refuse the application. But I also accept that the creation of a 6,700 square metre lot within the investigation area could be an impediment to the future master planning of the area. And while this proposal does not fit the Rural Code, and development of the Richmond investigation area is not expected until at least 2031, unfortunately this does not give the owners many options at the moment. And it only leaves the opportunity to possibly look at some low-intensity agricultural use that does not compromise the long-term use of a stage developed in the area. With that, I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation.
Are there any further speakers? No further speakers. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. 11.2.4, facilitating development of Mackay region, the Cool Beans Mackay Holdings Proprietary Limited Childcare Centre at 86 Juliet Street in South Mackay. And there's a request there in terms of the facilitating development policy, as we know, and the officer's recommendation in this is that we deliver a concession of 75%, which is outside of the policy. Director, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Worship. So, under facilitating development policy, concessions in these circumstances, in ordinary circumstances, would be 50%. The applicant has requested a 75% concession, and in this case, based on the work that was done in the preparation of this report, officers are supportive of that request. The policy does give flexibility to council to approve concession over and above what is in the schedules in the policy, where there are sort of exceptional circumstances or the development's going to have an exceptional benefit to the region. In this case, officers believe that this will, and also in the work that was done in preparing this report, it has become clear that there is a genuine need for childcare centres across the Mackay region. And there's actually a recommendation here that in the next review of the policy, that the thresholds for concessions listed in the relevant schedule are reviewed on that basis, given the need that has been uncovered as part of the work in preparing this report. The only other thing I'll comment on is just, while there is a need for childcare places generally, this particular proposal is catering and providing for services for a different type of childcare as well, in terms of children with special needs. It's quite unique in that way, and will definitely be of significant benefit to Mackay.
A few questions for the Director. Councillor Bonaventura.
Just, Your Worship, what other childcare facilities are within a 5K radius of this facility?
I can't answer that, Director.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Worship. There's 16 existing centres within a 5 kilometre radius of this particular centre, and there is an additional 4 centres that have been approved, but including this one, the subject of this application, that have been approved but not constructed.
Did, Your Worship, did any of those organisations or the approved ones apply for any extra facilitating development policy subsidy?
In terms of the new one, I can't answer that question. I have to take that on notice. Regarding the existing ones, it would depend when they were constructed too, and whether at the time that they actually were applying and getting approvals for that development, whether the facilitated development policy was even in existence, and if so, whether that schedule existed.
Okay.
Further questions? No further questions? Would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor May moves, seconded by Councillor Hassan. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Happy to support the officer's recommendation in this particular case. We see the need being demonstrated here for childcare centres. This is a 95-place childcare facility which will cater for children from 6 weeks to 6 years of age. The total investment in the development is approximately $6.5 million. There will be a need for staff, local supplies and resources, and the predicted revenue injection into the local community from this facility is estimated at $1.5 million per annum. The business model will be replicated in various sizes with an anticipated total of 4 developments throughout the region over the next 2 years. The economic benefit, as we've said, is $6.5 million, which will result in an economic impact of $11.5 million for the region. The applicant will utilise local contractors and suppliers, and local construction companies will be invited to tender for the construction of the development. So based on Council's economic modelling, the project will generate 7 direct and 18 indirect jobs, totalling 25 FTEs for jobs during construction. Post-construction, the applicant anticipates 30 new permanent jobs in areas such as childcare educators, chefs, building, garden maintenance and cleaning services. This particular childcare centre, as the director highlighted, is one of the few that cater for children with special needs, and we see 10 places being allocated to children with special needs in that facility. So with all of that taken into account, I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation of a 75% concession.
Thanks, Councillor May. Speaker against? Are there any others? You're speaking against, Councillor Bella?
I am quite in favour of this development. I am, however, not in favour of giving the increased concession. Every point that Councillor May put forward is correct, but what we've got to realise is this childcare centre is coming anyway. The idea of our facilitating developments is to get businesses here. This one is already here. The cost of providing this to them, now they're already getting a concession, they're asking for more concession. The cost to them, or the value to them, is 0.07% of their entire spend. It's minuscule. But for us, it represents the rates of between 15 and 20 of our average ratepayers. So to me, those 15 to 20 ratepayers, that's in entirety. And we don't have a lot of fat on each ratepayer. A lot of the ratepayers that go to contribute towards that 44,000 have disabled children themselves. They don't directly benefit. So what I'm saying is, if this were to get a business to town that we didn't have, I would consider it. And I believe it should be across all childcare centres. And I commend the director for saying that we will review the policy in that regard. But they are already here. They are already coming. We're merely handing dollars over to them. Thank you.
Speaking for? Speaking for, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Worship. Look, I totally take on board the points that Councillor Bella has just said, and I myself normally wouldn't go against our policy, but I am well aware of the need of childcare for children with special needs, and for me that's the only point of difference with this for me. We need to have that in our community. Yes, they're coming, as Councillor Bella said, but I just want to make sure that this need is attended to by this development coming to our community, and I'm very supportive of the recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Speaker against? Are there any other speakers? No other speakers? Exercise your right to reply, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I just really wanted to highlight around the dollars and the cost to our ratepayers. This infrastructure is already in the ground. It's already there. There is no additional cost to council in using this facilitating development concession to enable this childcare centre to establish itself in our region. And apart from the comments around already being here, this is probably one of the reasons why they're coming here, is that this council is open for business. We have policies in place that encourage development in our area around specific things that we would like to see happen in this Mackay region. Therefore, I support the recommendation.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? There's 2 against, so the motion is carried. 9-2, thank you. 11.3 is the engineering and commercial infrastructure reports for this month. And let's start with transport and drainage. Director.
Thank you, Your Worship. 7 safety incidents, 5 were asset related, so something we've been having a little bit of discussion about at DLT to make sure we keep on top of that more across the board. Overall, the transport and drainage budget is tracking slightly ahead, probably 4%. We probably expect the end of the year it's still going to be ahead of the budget. I'll talk a little bit more around some of the reasons for that, which is we've got an additional contractor on board at the moment trying to keep up with obviously vacancies and some unseasonal sort of wet weather through April, May, which has caused sort of some more immediate responses in our unsealed road network. We've just completed a Rakish run, so that's where we go and do twice a year the condition assessment of our unsealed roads, so a good timing sort of leading into the cane crushing sort of season, and we took the opportunity also to do an asset review. So we picked up a number of assets just to marry up with our asset register around guardrails and culverts and grates to be able to do that. The unseasonal wet weather has impacted our mowing team, so normally this is the best time to get in and into drains and that obviously get them cleaned up. That wet weather and the vacancy has caused some issues there. That sort of flowed onto the customer requests coming through. So when we did look at that data, most of that is tied to the maintenance and grass across the region. So there is some correlation there again. And just on the assets, obviously continue to work on the WIP and trying to get that down end of the financial year and continue to look at the opportunities there to improve the process. As we said, especially with ADAC to allow that integration with information to be able to flow a lot smoother to capitalise going forward. Otherwise,
Thanks, Director. Questions? Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Your Worship. I note that there were 12 general bins missed in Gorman Street at Bakers Creek and a further 5 general... Sorry? Oh, sorry.
Next one.
Sorry.
Right. Yes,
Apologies.
we're on transport and drainage. You can hold that over for the next one.
I
It's,
will.
Good forewarning for the Director. Questions? Councillor Bonaventura?
Oh, just the page 96 on the graph or the table there. I note that the expenditure on higher than anticipated spend on lighting expense, street lighting expenditure of 410,000. That seems a bit excessive. Could I just get a bit further explanation on what's caused that or what that relates to, please?
Yeah, through Your Worship. That's an accrual. I think we've actually recognised the cost of the actual lighting in, so we're actually a month ahead. So that will be a lot closer to budget at the end of the financial year.
Thank you.
Councillor Seymour?
Yeah, I had the same question as Councillor Bonaventura, but the lighting they are replacing that with, is it LED lighting or?
Not yet, I don't think, is it? The replacing, the lighting that we are replacing, is it LED yet?
No, there is a bit of work going on, looking at a business case and working with state government around that potential to bring some works forward there, but I think we're still working through those numbers and looking at the opportunity to attract a bit of funding, which probably is required to get that business case up.
One would expect that LEDs would be the replacement, but we don't own the light apparently, so we only pay for the electricity, which is a bit crazy, but anyway. Councillor Bonaventura.
Just further, the Director did mention about rural roads, etc., and the late wet we had from the start of the crush. Does he believe we've got our rural road network is in reasonable state as the crushing's sort of already underway?
Questions, Director?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Actually, we had an independent person do the racket run, so normally our own staff would do it. So that was someone associated with Shepherd. The feedback they gave was that our rural roads are certainly up there in the best condition they've seen in sort of Queensland and sort of the northern New South Wales. Obviously, at the same point, we obviously identified there is a number of sort of more immediate issues from the rain that had to be fixed. But generally, yeah, the overall feedback is that the road network is in good condition.
Did you frame that?
Yeah. What a statement.
Best in Queensland. That's very good. Questions? Councillor Townsend.
No.
No.
Next one.
I jumped ahead of myself, sorry.
Oh, right.
What's the next one?
Next one.
Sorry.
Are there questions? No questions. Okay. Would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Mann moves. Councillor Hassan seconds. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Bishop. I wanted to start off with safety, as I always do, and note that it's a high priority in this part of council with no LTIs recorded. There were some incidents recorded, but they've been investigated and appropriate corrective actions put in place. I also had concerns about the street lighting expenditure, but the Director has now covered off on what's caused that. In terms of maintenance activities, signage installation and maintenance has generated the most work orders, followed by open drainage mowing and footpath repairs. And the maintenance teams, I think, have done a fantastic job of addressing a backlog of work orders and customer requests. As we heard, heavy rain in May impacted unsealed road network, seeing an increased number of customer requests being received. Planned grading program in preparation for the commencement of the crushing season has seen additional contract resources being retained until the end of June. And I wanted to mention the customer survey results for March and April, which show our customers rate the attitude of staff receiving the requests and the attitude of staff attending the request is very good.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mann. Speaker against? Any other speakers? Councillor Bella.
I'd like to congratulate infrastructure on their work on gravel roads. However, there are some concerns that I do have. And this is basically just a foreshadow. It's something I'll be working on in the next period of time. While our RACA score is a good indication, I believe it's objective, but I believe we do need some sort of subjectivity with our rural roads. In one road in particular, it was assessed and it hadn't met intervention levels. However, there were areas there where the damage caused vehicles to move towards the centre of the road. And in this case, we've got a school bus route, and we will be crossing over with heavy vehicles, as in carting trucks. I do believe that we need to look into our RACA system, and we need to have an overlay of school bus routes. Kids on those buses travel for hours every day to and from school. They're travelling on roads, I believe, that are particularly rough and, to be honest, during a crushing, quite dangerous. So it's not just a matter of whether they've got potholes on the road, it's a matter of where those potholes are, how it directs traffic and the risk involved. As I said, I believe that our school bus routes deserve probably special attention. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bella. Any other speakers? No other speakers. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. ECI for Waste. Rick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, no LTI, so good to see in relation to waste services. There is a correction on the graph around Hogan pocket tonnages, where we do make the statement that tonnage received at Hogan pocket landfill for May were higher than those received in April, and we've got the same figures, but obviously the May figure should be 7136, so slight reduction there. So sorry about not picking it up when we initially put that out, but again, seeing that variability of Hogan's pocket, so it seems to be up and down if you look at it across the last 12 months. Sort of at this period, we're nearly the same we were 12 months ago. So a little bit hard to read on what's going on there, given that we would probably expect with population starting to increase and start to see some trend up in some of those tonnages. But it may just be that we're actually seeing greater diversion, which is obviously really good as well. Just on the waste budget, so it's slightly behind the forecast position currently, but I expect we'll be close by the end of the financial year in relation to that. Picking up on the bins issue, so 308,000 pickup, only the 34 missed, which is a really good outcome in relation to obviously that percentage. And dump voucher redemption rate is currently quite low at 13.3, but it does go through for a couple more months, and we tend to see that greater pickup in the latter part of that period. So otherwise, happy to take the questions.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Worship. I was sort of not sure whether or not to do this as speaking, but there is a question at the end, so if you could just be patient with me for a sec. So under safety, I see that there was a car battery that was placed in the recycling waste and then it shorted out. I'd like to really send, or council to send, a strong message. Not only is this very unsafe, but for the staff, but also, you know, that there is actually a number of scrap metal dealers in town, like Jetson, like, you know, anything environmental. They can actually take the batteries. I myself, when I take my cans into anything environmental, I took 5 batteries in there one day and I got $35 for 5 batteries. So my question, Your Worship, is that do we need to do a better than we've done public education campaign to be able to educate people on this, because of the fact that this could have been very, very serious?
Director?
Yeah, good question, Councillor. Yeah, look, I think there's obviously lots of different aspects that we'd like to do more media. We're talking a little bit about some of the contamination coming through from building waste, also So yeah, I think it's just a point in time, but it certainly is a significant risk in relation to batteries going into our bins. So yeah, happy to have a talk about it. I think we have done it before, but yeah, it might be good to re-look at that and put some social media out there.
And just think, the fact that we say that it's a risk and people shouldn't do it, if we add and you can get money for your battery, I think that's just a little bit more of a hook for them, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's a good point, and we continually see this happening of stuff being disposed of in the red top bins that shouldn't be there. That's a good point. Further questions? Councillor Townsend.
Can I ask mine now? Thank you, Your Worship. 34 bins missed, I did see that, but I did wonder why 12 general bins were missed in Gorman Street at Bakers Creek and a further 5 missed at Burton's Access Road at Cuttable. It just seems like they've missed half the street or something. I'm just wondering if there is a reason behind that.
Director.
Thank you, Worship. Very good question, and even with the heads up a little early, I still probably can't answer it accurately, unfortunately. It probably looks like I would expect that maybe they probably missed those streets. So generally we see sometimes if there's new drivers or a change in driver, that can occur. But yeah, that looks pretty particular around those 2 streets. I'm guessing they were missed for whatever reason, but I can actually get some more detail on the reasons that occurred this time.
Thank you.
Further questions? Councillor Bonaventura.
Just the bottom of page 219. I was just after a bit more detail on the project and whether we'll get any information on what's happening in that project. It's to do, Your Worship, with the engagement with CQ Uni about waste services concept for a redesigned wheelie bin. So if the Director could enlighten me a little bit, would be great.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I think it was certainly a good initiative, and it's great to see that we're starting to work with the unis a little bit more. It was probably more from the uni side and the ability to give them a project and working with council to have a look at it. So at the moment, the outcomes or recommendation, we sort of obviously had those presented back to the staff, and there was good feedback. But it was probably not an element we'll take further as something we need to probably do with our bins at this point in time.
Councillor Bonaventura.
Would we look at, or would they build some prototypes to test? Would we look at doing that?
I'm not sure of the exact details, Councillor, but I think from the point of view of the project status, they've probably met their requirements presented back to Council and Smith. I'm not sure if there's further work planned on that. But, certainly if there's opportunity to continue to work on something like that, we'll certainly embrace that.
Thank you.
Further questions? Councillor Bella.
I did mention this in a previous meeting, but the fee waivers, community service obligation fee waivers, when you look at these not-for-profits, I remember in the last term we struggled to keep them in under those limits, and the results have been outstanding for a period now. And I'm wondering whether the Director or maybe even Councillor Bonaventura can enlighten us on with his tie-up with St Vincent de Paul, on some of the strategies they've adopted to keep them in under these limits.
Yeah, pretty much. I think the primary issue was that we saw where most of the contamination was coming from, where they had numerous bins spread across the community. So there was an ability then for people just to go and obviously use those, but dump a lot of material that then came back to those charities. So I think what we've seen over time, and certainly our staff have been actively working with that, with a lot of the organisation, is to reduce those number of bins where there's not security ability to manage the issue. So there's been a gradual pullback on the number of bins that have been located across the region. In my view, that's probably the major reason and correlation you see in the reductions.
Would this not be actually of benefit to these organisations in that, just the sheer manual handling of the waste that gets dumped at those bins would place, quite a load on volunteers, especially considering the ageing demographic of our volunteering workforce. So
yeah, getting through it, I agree. So the logistics and then obviously trying to manage that waste, and they had a lot of You know, they could have anything dumped there, hard loads to actually manage to get in the truck. So it created a whole other issue and risk on the charity side as well.
So this was a win-win.
Right, could I respond to Councillor Bella? Just in relation to Vinnie's alone, they have removed all of their street bins, and that gave us the first and the biggest improvement in what we were getting, because if it's at the street bin, they either put it in there or they leave it beside us. Most times it's beside us and it gets wet, it's automatically rubbish has to go to the tip. But Vinnie's have gone one step further in the way that they only accept donations during office hours when they're open. And there's a sign up, if you wouldn't give it to a friend, don't give it to us. And they also make people sort as they come in. So anything you bring in, you bring a bag of stuff, you tip it out, and if it's clothes, it goes there. If it's shoes, it goes in a different basket. So it gets looked at quickly as it comes in. So if it's not suitable, we say, sorry, you'll have to take that with you. Because Councillor Bella is right. The time it takes, and we're very thankful to Council for the ongoing support in relation to fee waivers, but the time it takes during the day to pick up a load of rubbish, take it to our transfer station, unload it, does take a considerable amount of time for our volunteers, and there's always got to be a paid staff member with them, so it is a considerable amount of time out of the day. So yeah, I think other groups could look at some of the things Vinnie's do, and it possibly would reduce that amount we have to give even further. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Bonaventura. Are there any other questions? No other questions? Somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Hassan moves, seconded by Councillor Green. Councillor Hassan.
Thank you, Worship. Well, as the Director stated, the Waste Services team have again maintained their outstanding safety record with no lost time injuries for the month. It was a bit disappointing, however, to see that there was an incident involving a member of the public being abusive to a staff member when they were asked to pay for dumping their load of rubbish. So obviously when you drive in there and dump it, you know there's going to be a fee on your way out, so I just don't understand the thought behind that. But the damage to the boom gate, obviously unacceptable, but even more distressing and unacceptable is the behaviour displayed towards our staff. Our staff are just doing their job, requesting that payment. So I just think if people have an issue, contact council, contact a councillor. Don't take your problems out on the staff who are just doing their job there on the day. I was interested to read that our contractor, as the Director stated, completed a total of, the number in the report says 308,871.5 bin lifts. And I wasn't sure whether they just lifted the bin halfway up or only emptied half the rubbish out of it, but the 0.5 was, anyway, it's a phenomenal number either way. It was just interesting. But just to note that they only missed 34 bins out of that number of lift is pretty good. It was also really good to see the level of community engagement that's now being undertaken after the COVID period that we saw through by our officers. There were 7 presentations provided to a total of 146 kindergarten age children and 42 students from years 1 and 2 at Swainville State School. Staff also addressed the school assembly, so pretty much the entire school at St Mary's Catholic Primary School and Mackay West State School regarding recycling, so getting that message out to our kids. And engaged with 2 very creative engineering students, which was mentioned before, around their concept of a redesigned wheelie bin. So it's really fantastic to see this younger generation getting involved. And I just think that a sustainable future is definitely within our reach with our next generation who are so actively participating in our move towards a circular economy. Well, it was a really positive report, but a bit disappointing to finish with another reminder to the community to not place non-recyclable items into their bins. Again, we mentioned the battery in the bin. Materials recovery facility is also experiencing contamination rates due to metal coming through there. So car parts, small appliances, and building materials, bricks, pavers, concretes, all sorts of things that are being put in people's bin. They just can't go through there. And as Councillor Jones referred, there's lots of scrap metal places around town. There are other options for dumping that material, so please don't put it into the bins.
Thanks very much, Councillor Hassan. Speaker against? Any other speakers? Councillor Bella speaking for.
Firstly, I'd just like to comment on Councillor Hassan and Councillor Jones' comments. If you are dumping some scrap metal and you couldn't be bothered waiting and you don't think it's enough to wait for the money that you get for it, and it is actually considerable money now, some of the scrap metal recyclers actually have bins out the front that you can go in and just drop them in. Raw does. So it's merely a matter of driving past, chucking it in, and away you go. Getting to what I actually wanted to speak about, I generally don't speak about a whole report. I pick out things that jump out at me. Now, this is something that doesn't jump out, but it should. 214 tonnes of material were handled by the incredible tip shop during May. The tonnage in itself is exceptional, but the Incredible Tip Shop, for people that don't know, is an amazing place. It's an Aladdin's cave of things that it can keep you there for a long, long time. A bit dangerous, actually, but you know, the plus side for that place, there are books there that, you know, cost very little. I know a lot of people don't read many books anymore, but it's worth going. The other thing, I'm a bit of an aficionado of getting older stuff and putting in a little bit of work and turning it into something that's very, very serviceable. And at the moment, it's toolboxes. Toolboxes of various size for tools, for bolts, for all sorts of things. The toolboxes you tend to get, there are toolboxes from years ago. And naturally, they're of a heavier gauge, they're more durable, and all they take is a bit of a scratch, a bit of rust, kill, and a paint job. And they'll outlast some of the new stuff you buy. So you do that, not only are you saving that going to the tip, you're saving that cheap, nasty plastic toolbox from wherever it was made that's going to end up in the tip. No matter how much you look after it, it's going to end up in the tip in a matter of a year or two. And that's just one area. How many people go and buy exercise machines? I don't know. You know, have a go at it for a couple of months and then it sits for years under the bed or in the garage and it ends up in the dump. So you've spent a fortune. It's more to go into whatever facilities, you know, for us to cope with it. Go to the tip shop. There's stuff there that's really good, and I'd say go and buy it for very little money. Give it a go, and if you find you're committed, when it breaks in, go and buy yourself a flash one. But it's a great try before you buy. This shop is just a great place, and you need to go there. Everyone does. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Bella. Any other speakers? No other speakers. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Thank you. ECI for water.
Thank you, Worship. So again, safety, very good ongoing performance in relation to LTIs. There was one first aid and one suitable duties and 7 incidents for the month. Overall, the water and sewage budget is tracking slightly ahead of where we anticipated of the operation. We expect that probably to be the case going forward, offset some by a little bit more revenue. So we should be around the mark at the end of the financial year. Water consumption, so that's dropped obviously this time of year when we start to have less of a need to water your grass and your plants, and then obviously with the additional rainfall in May. So good to see consumption is down below our target across all our schemes. Really good customer survey results for the water area in March and April, so again above their 4.25 stars. So excellent customer service from that team continues to come to the fore. We had 128 MyH2O registrations, which is the largest for 12 months, so largely off the back of our water notices going out, but that's good to see. And yeah, the Facebook posts, most were around, I think we talked about this before, the Southern Rising Main project and when that was occurring. But otherwise, I have to take any questions, Your Worship.
Thanks very much, Director. Questions for the Director? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Your Worship. In customer service 3.1 in the report, I note that the work requests are the highest that they've been in the last 12 months. I'm wanting to know if is there a reason, or is it that our community have actually been more proactive in being our eyes and ears and letting council know when there's something not quite right. At the end of the day, you know, well done to the community if that's the case, because we as council or councillors don't get to see every square inch of our region, and especially when our water and our sewerage is under the ground, nobody gets to see it. But yeah, it's just interesting that they, you know, those work requests were highest that they've ever been, and I just thought I'd ask if we knew why.
Director.
Yeah, good observation, Councillor. I'm not sure, so I'll have to take it on notice to understand if there's a particular reason. It has certainly gone up significantly from the previous month, or there might be just a timing issue there about receiving some of them, but I'll certainly ask the question, get some feedback and provide that to councillors.
Thank you.
Further questions? No further questions. Would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Hassan moves, seconded by Councillor Green. Councillor Hassan.
Thank you, Worship. Well, safety again. So May saw no lost time injuries reported by the water services team, but there were 7 incidents. One of these was a near miss involving a cane train. So I think it's just a really good reminder to everybody that it's cane crushing season, and to just be aware that there's cane trains and other heavy equipment and carting vehicles travelling on our roads during this time of year. So very easy to, like they've done, come out from behind some long grass and come out onto a railway line and find a train coming towards you. So just reminder to everyone to please take care. In accordance with the Plumbing and Drainage Act, a plumbing application is required for all new installations or modifications to existing plumbing installations, with these applications needing to be lodged obviously to the local government, to council. Our water services team have a regulatory timeframe of 20 business days to assess these applications, with an internal target of 5 business days set for the processing of those. In May 2022, a total of 62 plumbing applications were approved, which was an increase on 59% over the previous month, so a massive increase. But the approval turnaround time for those was just 1 day, so that was well within that time frame. It's a really great outcome for that whole team to process such a significant number within a month. As the Director said, the customer service survey results for March and April were included in that report. And as always, the outcomes and feedback for this team are absolutely outstanding. The level of service that they provide to the community through this team is really a credit to them. And finally, again, community engagement by this team was also a standout. There were school education sessions, lots of social media posts around the rising sewer main. And if anyone hasn't seen that video, it's actually really, really interesting to watch, and a fantastic collaborative process undertaken by a large number of our staff. There's lots of useful information on Council's website that's available, and this all plays a part in involving community and our understanding of our water usage.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hassan, speaker against. Any other speakers? Councillor Bonaventura.
First. Firstly, to the Director and the team, congratulations on the 120 plus My H2O registrations. It's been a while since we've seen anything near that. So, and to residents out there, if you're not on My H2O, please consider joining. It's free and can save you a lot in your water bill if you can sort of get ahead of the leak very early in the piece. Just like to follow on from Councillor Hassan in relation to thanking the Director for those, and thank the Director to chase up for those that were involved in the novel ideas to alert people to reduce the amount of wastewater they were using in order to assist the crews in the repair work on Paradise Street. With over 3,600 likes from the 5 topics that went out in the 18 Facebook posts, I think you've got to say that was very, very successful. I also did my bit, Your Worship. I put it on my Facebook page. I got just over 100 likes, so I may have sort of assisted a little bit in that. But no, a great result all round, so thank you.
Well done, Councillor Bonaventura. Councillor Bella, speaking for.
I actually wanted to pick out exactly the same thing. It's interesting to me that when we first spoke about and went public on the idea of this repair, we got the usual negative comments from lots of people. I was looking on social media, and you know, maybe news to them, but even sewer mains do need repairs now and then, and it's not a very flash job. However, once some of the photographs of the magnitude and scale of that work started to go out, you noticed a distinct turn in the tone of people commenting and liking. And I've got to say, and Councillor Bonaventura may regret that he got to speak first, but I've got to say I appreciated his photos, but I was shown a photo by someone that was working on site taken the other way, showing a somewhat dishevelled and sleep-deprived councillor holding the wire and gazing through the mesh at the stuff that went on. I've got to say that made my day. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bella. Any other speakers? No other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Thank you very much. And go to yours, Councillor Englert. So it's carried unanimously. Thank you. Let's move on. The Organisational Services Monthly Review for March. Our Director is Crook today. So we've got an acting Director.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks for the opportunity to present the Organisational Services Monthly Review for May. Safety continues to be a focus of the department, with no LTIs being recorded in the past 3 months. Some highlights for the department include the customer service team continuing to achieve outstanding customer satisfaction results, 96% of completed surveys indicating that our external customers were satisfied with the service that was provided. Although the level of abandoned calls is high, the callback request rate is also high, which indicates that people prefer receive a call back from council rather than waiting on hold. Council continues to support the local community with purchasing materials and services locally, with a spend in the month of May of $13.8 million, which is approximately 2/3 of all funds expensed in materials and services by council, remaining within local businesses. In the corporate planning space, the focus was on finalising the operational plan for 2022-23, which was adopted by council at the last meeting. Information services request resolution customer satisfaction surveys continue to be very strong, with close to 100% of customers stating their expectations were either met or exceeded their expectations. Aquatic attendances to our two heated pool facilities have exceeded last year's figures, with the Pioneer Pool and the Mark recording an increase of 562 and 1,362 respectively. Council continues to invest in the health and wellbeing of our staff, with influenza vaccination clinic conducted and Safe Talk training being held in the month of May. There was an increase in the number of vaccinations administered compared to last year, and 6 additional employees are now trained in suicide prevention skills. Preparation for the 22-23 budget adoption continued through the month of May, with papers finalised and distributed to you all in readiness for the special budget meeting being held today. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Acting Director. Questions? Councillor Bell.
I was just wondering if the Director could tell me, is influenza similar to influenza at all?
I think so. It's a new strain.
Okay, Councillor Mann.
So I do have two. In relation to abandoned calls, just wondered what the average time taken to get back to a customer once they utilise that option.
Can you answer that, Jane? Okay, take it on notice. And the second?
And this was about external customer service satisfaction, and the report talking about availability challenges, and I wondered what those availability challenges were.
Director?
Restate that question.
Yeah.
So, electronic page 261, external customer satisfaction. The report talks about availability challenges, despite the customer service team achieving outstanding customer satisfaction results, and I just wondered what the availability challenges were.
Yeah, availability of staff is probably what it's talking about there, through the known issues with the ongoing COVID crisis and the increase in the flu season we've experienced.
So staff availability challenges. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Bell.
If I might, I could possibly give an anecdotal a bit of a view on the callback services to Councillor Mann. I had need, and generally I do go through the call centre to call in, had need a couple of times earlier in the week. Generally, if there's one person waiting, one call ahead, I'll wait. But I've never heard or never run across so many people lined up. It was 6, 7s and 8s. The callback would have been no more than 5 minutes. So they're racking through them pretty quickly, I think. So,
thanks,
only anecdotal, but yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Bell. Further questions? Councillor Seymour.
Yeah, in the recruitment there, it says there was 147 total vacant positions. 50 positions were advertised, resulting in 342 applicants and 45 filled. Were the 342, were there any other applicants out of that could fit the other outstanding jobs? There's only so many positions filled.
Director, it's probably a little difficult to answer that.
A little bit difficult to answer, but through my experience, we are able to use at times an existing pool of applicants if the position description is similar. We are re-advertising and going back out to the market to test them up again.
It's a good question that P&C might be able to articulate. If we take it on notice, because if we get I think the question is we had 340 odd applicants, filled 60 jobs, what do we do with the others, or were they not suitable? It might be good for P&C to come back and just address that. Further questions? No further questions? Would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Mann moves, seconded by Councillor Hassan. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Richard. I'll start off on safety and thank the department for their continued focus on working safely and completing monthly safety interactions and inspections. There were 6 incidents reported, and it was actually really disappointing again to see a child needing assistance to get to the edge of the pool because they weren't able to swim effectively. And I just think it's a timely reminder again for parents and carers to make sure that they're watching children while they're in the water. The acting director mentioned about the flu vaccinations, and I think again with onset of flu and we're seeing how many people are affected, it was really good to see that there was a total of 377 vaccines administered through our staff. I'll certainly utilise it every year, and I am really pleased that I do. In terms of business improvement projects that are ongoing, particularly interested in the onboarding packages where it talks about not printing all documents for new employees and rather send them electronically. So I think that is a really good initiative to explore, given how many reams of paper this organisation might go through, and sustainability into the future. Shared services continue to deliver outstanding result despite challenges, including unplanned leave and illness and that sort of thing. Total of 8,209 calls received in May reporting period, averaging 391 calls per day. And that exceeded the average of the three-year average for a reporting period. First contact resolution showed that 54% of customer queries were resolved at first contact, so that is really good too. That just demonstrates how much knowledge our customers have, our officers have. And the customer service team were able to satisfy over 1,020 general rating inquiries in that first contact resolution and process over 378 payment plans. So sometimes they're not an easy process either, so it can be quite complex and time consuming and just again shows the level of expertise in the team. The team again achieved outstanding customer satisfaction results with 96% of completed surveys indicating that our external customers are very satisfied with the service provided. Always good to hear as well. And I will mention the IT support team. Their survey results were fantastic in regard to request resolution and internal customer satisfaction, especially as they're experiencing issues with, I guess, unplanned illnesses, recruiting positions. So there's lots of challenges in the organisation, and our customer service officers, whether they're internal or external, step up to the challenge every time.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mann. They sure do a heck of a lot of work. Well done. Any further speakers? No further speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Let's move on. 11.4.2, the lease of land for the Rugby League Mackay District Limited. It's pretty well self-explanatory. The officer's recommendation is that Council resolves that an exemption applies under Section 236 and then approves a new lease for the Rugby League Mackay District Limited for a total area of 6 hectares plus, as outlined there, for a period of 10 years. Are there questions? Councillor Seymour.
Yeah, with that, they're asking for the car park to be deleted from the lease. Did that happen at all?
You can answer that, CEO.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's the purpose of.
I just wonder why we're still drawn in on that.
Okay.
Yep.
No further questions. Somebody like to move the adoption? Councillor Green moves, seconded by Councillor Hassan. Councillor Green.
Thanks, Your Worship. So yes, the purpose of this report is to approve a new trustee lease for Rugby League Mackay District Limited, RLMD, which is situated at 15 Casey Avenue, South Mackay, for the period of 10 years, as you said. RLMD are a well-established local organisation and have a long history with the site. Their current lease commenced in 2010 and is due to expire in 2030. So this lease was established with the creation of the Mackay Stadium and included an agreement with the stadium over the use and maintenance responsibilities of the car park, which remained in the lease with RLMD. However, as a club, they are struggling to keep the car park maintained to the standard that's required of a car park of this calibre. So Council received a notification in May from RLMD officially requesting that the car park be removed from their lease area and that Council take on the maintenance responsibilities of this car park. Given the usage of the car park by the stadium and other clubs within the precinct and further plans for the area, Council has agreed to take on the maintenance responsibilities. So this means the existing lease will be surrendered and a new lease issued, minus the car park area. However, the new lease will include a clause to provide a right of access across the car park to ensure that RLMD can access their lease area, especially for emergency vehicles. And as the car park becomes Council's responsibility, there will be ongoing maintenance and capital costs, but it's apparent that this is the most advantageous outcome for both the council, the club and the community.
Thank you very much, Councillor Green. Speaker against? Are there any other speakers? Okay, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Unanimously. There's no petitions for today. Tenders, 13.1, tender number 40 for 2022, the Goose Ponds Creek and Seaforth Creek Bank Protection Works. Questions? Councillor May?
Yes, so just asked a question in relation to the spreading of this over a 3-year budgetary period. With the tender being hopefully let today, do we not see that work being carried out within the 12-month period?
So, Director.
Yeah, my understanding is it will be carried out over the next 12-month period.
So, Councillor May, your question is...
Well, that raises a question that
3 years.
in this coming financial year's budget, we only have $200,749 plus what the carryover is from 21-22. There's sitting over $700,000 in 23-24 to complete this project. How do we get that into this next financial year's budget?
Yeah, so this paper is not identifying necessarily where the money's spent, it's where it was sitting as a budget. So it's showing where the budgets are in the long-term financial, which make up the total project budget. So yes, we'll bring it forward in a budget review when we have a more detailed plan from the contractor about it. And we'll take that step once we've awarded it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fine.
Further questions? No further questions. Would somebody like to move then that we adopt this tender? Councillor May moves, seconded by Councillor Hassan. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship.
This is a project that's been a while in the making. We've seen on one of our council and community days the Seaforth Creek bank that needs stabilising. Personally, haven't seen the Goose Ponds, but and again we see the contracts exceeding what council had budgeted. So this is an ongoing problem for us. This one's not too bad, only a couple of $100,000 over what our estimated costs were, but it continues to be a challenge in this space for council, but happy to support the tender.
Thank you very much. Speaker against? Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Kelsey Creek, the water pump station, stage 2 of this particular quote being received. Does anybody want to speak to this, CEO? No? Okay, it's pretty well straightforward. Director, there's nothing further to add to this? No. No questions? Somebody like to move? Councillor Jones moves, seconded by Councillor Townsend. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Worship. I guess my sentiments are a little bit along the lines of Councillor May's. Just like the last tender we've just discussed, Goose Pond Creek, Seaforth Creek, and now Kelsey Creek Pump Station. I guess we've had some difficult tenders to try and award over the last period of time, and it's been hard because of the economic climate that we're in. COVID and staffing levels we speak about all the time affecting our community. However, I do want to highlight that these 2 contracts alone have an increased budget for them to go ahead, and as a result we'll be finding another $500,000 to be able to allow these projects to move forward. But it is great that we can move forward because this work is muchly needed. Thank you, Worship.
Thanks very much. Councillor Jones, speaker against? Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. There's no notified motions today, no public participation. Late business. Councillor Hassan.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to refer to, I was lucky to, or very honoured actually, to do a funeral service with the Reverend Dr. Julia Pittman on Saturday morning, and catching up with her for a chat afterwards, she advised that today, Wednesday the 22nd of June, is actually the 45th anniversary of the Uniting Church in Australia. So she just wanted to bring this to the attention, and I offered to do that on her behalf. So it is the anniversary today. The UCA President, Reverend Sharon Hollis, has actually put together a video on YouTube, which we'll distribute through Council's networks later. And there was a message. So this actually came from Ed Casey, who was originally an independent, but then a member of the Labor Party, who was the state member for Mackay. And this speech was made in Parliament on the inauguration of the Uniting Church in Australia in the State Parliament. And this following reading is from the actual Hansard records. So Ed Casey stated, during the sitting of Queensland Parliament at 12:29am on the 15th of April 1977, in speaking in favour of passing legislation that would enable the Uniting Church to be a legal entity within the state of Queensland, the state member for Mackay, Ed Casey, spoke these words. The three churches, Presbyterian, Methodist and Congregational, do wonderful work for the people throughout the state. They do God's work amongst the sick, the poor, the young and the old. It's very important that this House ensures that their work is protected by the legislative cover of the law that we can give them. In looking at this aspect of their work among the sick, the poor, the old and the young, we should remember that the Christian churches in our community have led in this field and governments have merely followed. It was truly Christian men and women who made the initial sacrifices to set up old people's homes, now not called old people's homes, youth hostels, hospitals and congregations to assist the poor long before government stepped in and took a hand in this work. So I just want to congratulate the Uniting Churches on their 45th anniversary and recognise that.
Yeah. And I think, on behalf of council, we'll write a congratulatory email to the church, noting you putting this to our table today. Further late business, Councillor Ballard.
I was very pleased to be informed just a little while ago by our Executive Officer Dave McHenry that work on something that I've been pursuing for quite a while is progressing very rapidly, and that is the work on safety barriers and that on Young Larange. It's been of concern to me that, to be honest, it's a pretty hairy trip for anyone, but when you consider once again that school kids going up and down that range, with the development we're looking at doing for tourism and whatever, I would say there will be an increase in traffic up and down that range. But for me, this is not just about visitors to our region, it's about a lot of our residents that do that late at night. I remember we stayed up there quite a few months ago, and the lady that actually served us at the restaurant that night was finishing up at 1 o'clock and then was having to go down that range in the fog and the cold. And a lot of the accidents on that range are people that have traversed it many hundreds of times. Same as many farmers that roll tractors have a massive amount of experience. I think it's a bit of familiarity leads to a certain amount of contempt. But once again, just to say that I'm very pleased that some work is going on. I don't think it completely solves the problem. I believe that there's other work that can be done, but it's a good start, and we should continue to try and improve the standard of the access to one of our premier tourist areas. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bella. Further late business? No further late business? We have 3 confidential reports to consider. Does anybody want to move on? Okay. If there's no requirement to close the meeting, fairly well standard monthly reports. The first is the Legal Services Monthly Report for May. Would somebody like to move its adoption? Councillor May moves, Councillor Hassan seconds. Councillor Mann moves, Councillor Hassan seconds. Those in favour? Any against? It's carried, thank you. The approved sponsorship under the Invest Mackay Events and Conference Attraction Program for May. Somebody like to move? Councillor May moves, Councillor Townsend seconds. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried, thank you. And finally, the approved concessions under the Facilitating Development of the Mackay Region Policy for May 2022. Councillor Mann moves, seconded by Councillor Hassan. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Thank you very much, councillors. Thank you very much, CEO and directors. Declare the meeting closed.